Hallo und willkommen to Nummerwang. Nathan, you are on the Fang.
6.
Das ist Nummerwang.
7.
Das ist Nummerwang.
21.
Das ist Nummerwang.
30.
Das ist Nummerwang.
100.
Nein, 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 das ist nicht Nummerwang.
Oh, so hi everyone. So today's episode is going to be a bit about historiography. Very
Yes.
useful for your controversy.
Ooh, controversial.
Very controversial. So we've built up all the way to the beginning of the First World War, and the controversy is about who was responsible for this war.
Greece. No. No. We need evidence and explanation, of course.
So before we start, as Remy said, everyone knows that Greece was responsible for the First World War, but we're going to have to take you through the more conventional historians' points of view.
The main lame, shame, game, tame, stream historians.
Yes.
So,
what is the orthodox view? Sorry, Remy.
as enshrined by the Versailles Treaty, it was that Germany and its allies were all to blame. War was premeditated by Germany, and it deliberately made it unavoidable. And also that Germany and Austria-Hungary deliberately worked to defeat all the conciliatory proposals made by the Entente power to prevent war.
So, really to sum up there, the orthodox view is that Germany is wholly responsible, and not just that it was responsible, but it deliberately started the war, and the Entente was the peaceful, just trying to get along, and Germany just starts a war with them.
Yeah. So that was rejected rather quickly by some revisionists who had the view of collective responsibility.
Yeah.
So they, for example, David Lloyd George, and this is a very nice way, said that they muddled into war. And if you listen to last time's episode, we did muddle our way through. So, I can see why they think that.
And then, building on that, Sidney Fay, an American historian, very influential in his time in the 30s, says that Germany didn't plot the war. It was just a casualty of the alliance system, that because it was allied to Austria-Hungary, and Austria-Hungary was going towards Serbia, which was allied with Russia, everyone kind of gets pulled in. And Austria-Hungary was responsible, but it acted in self-defence because the expansion of Serb nationalism threatened its borders and threatened its interests. Russia was also partly to blame for encouraging the Serbs and mobilising its troops. They mobilised first, to remember. France was also to blame for its alliance with Russia, and Britain, again, didn't restrain the Russians or the French and was part of the alliance system. So again, it had a part to play. So you really see how the collective responsibility argument built its case.
But the post-revisionist Fritz Fischer, who in 1961 gave a different explanation, he was very controversial at the time, and he was much more of...
When was that time, really?
When was that time?
Yeah,
1961. I believe he was much more of an intentionalist. That is, he focused more on the aims and policies of key figures as opposed to the whole thing.
In some respects, yes, he was.
Yeah, and he kind of looked at Kaiser, Bethmann Hollweg, the Foreign Secretary, and Moltke, the Chief of Staff. And he said that Germany had actually planned for World War One, and he said that Germany was prepared to launch World War One to become a great power, that encouraged Austria-Hungary to go to war, and it also, kind of used the war to try and expand itself, Lebensraum, as it was. One of my favourite German words is coming up. Fischer gave this idea that German's foreign policy was actually based on domestic concerns. So that is time to go Primat der Innenpolitik, as opposed to a traditional view that German's foreign policy was shaped by external factors.
Or
so
otherwise as Primat der Außenpolitik.
Exactly. So effectively, it tried to divert attention from domestic discontent.
So you'll have to go back about 3 episodes to find the domestic discontent.
Exactly.
But there was plenty of it.
Yeah, by having a war, it was going to distract the population, which is
so
malicious.
In some ways, Fischer's view, that last bit of Fischer's view, kind of fits in with the more structuralist historians, looking at people like Wehler, who said that Germany... Oh, is that not?
Yeah, I can't...
Yeah, so Wehler, who basically said that it was German society, the elites, they wanted war to distract the population, and they wanted war because that was the only way of keeping society together. Societies often come together in war, rally behind a flag, and that otherwise the elites would have lost control. So they needed this war in a structuralist kind of way. The whole society was built towards that.
But another interesting thing that Fisher said was
Sorry
that...
to interrupt your Fisher
No,
explanation.
don't worry. Was that World War I was not a preventative war, but it was one where Germany aimed to dominate and expand into Europe.
Yeah.
And Fisher controversially said that Hitler's foreign policy was very much a continuation of this. So he drew parallels between Bethmann, Hollweg, and
Hitler. Which is controversial because Bethmann seemed like kind of, in some ways, a bit of a meek figure in some respects, and trying to avoid war. But Fisher's saying the opposite, saying he wanted war, it had to be war.
Yeah. So we now go on to people who opposed Fisher, such as who would you argue?
So we're looking. I'd say we're looking at people like some more German historians, like Ritter in particular. Gerhard Ritter, and he draws on some of the things that we mentioned in the last episode, saying that it was very muddled. Like there was no unified German plan for war, or even as Fisher was suggesting, world domination. Germany was only supporting its ally. That's all it was doing, and they realised too late, perhaps, that a localised war would spread into a European-wide war. So that's where it's another kind of a different revisionist, a post-revisionist almost view coming into play there. Then we have some more interesting points of view put forward. One of our favourite historians, A.J.P. Taylor.
A.J.P. Taylor, great again, oral man. I'll just emphasise that.
Emphasise that point. He puts more emphasis. He tries to dispel the fact that some of the revisionist historians said that the alliance system played a big part, and he says no, actually, they weren't that important. That they were so fragile that they can't really be a major cause. And that's an interesting point. Italy was actually allied with the Austrians and the Germans, yet joined. I believe they even joined. They didn't. They definitely didn't join the Austrian side.
Yeah.
And perhaps were even on the other side. They protected France even a bit.
A.J.P. Taylor also had this very interesting war by timetable theory, which he said it was caused almost entirely by rival plans for mobilisation. So they went to war purely for technical reasons, and that they had to use the trains to mobilise by a certain time. And a little bit like how the Tsar had to mobilise at one point or not mobilise at all if he wanted to actually fight a war. So the Schlieffen plan, you could argue, limited the flexibility in the system. So it's an interesting one.
There's a few more historians which we'll quickly cover before the end of the episode.
Yeah.
We've got Remak, who puts a lot of emphasis on the nationalism, Serb nationalism, German nationalism, Austro-Hungarian nationalism, all these nationalism trying to expand. Obviously, there's only a finite amount of room they can expand into, which inevitably leads to war. We've got Röhl, an intentionalist, as a word Remy mentioned earlier, the fact that a few top figures in Austria and in Berlin, they were the ones responsible for war. It wasn't a society thing. It wasn't the fault of France or Britain or Russia. It was them.
The few leading elites. Which is why I like pluralism.
Driving Germany and the whole of Europe to war. And I mentioned the structuralist historians briefly earlier, Wähler, Berghan, don't know how to pronounce his name, who focus on the internal problems of Germany, the Zabern affair, the rise of the SPD, and the elite saying, we've got to go to war, we've got to expand, otherwise the working classes, the proletariat, will take over. Would you like to quickly mention the last one?
A few more. There's the calculated risk from Strandman, who suggests that the German leadership undertook a calculated risk to try and improve Germany's diplomatic and domestic strength,
which hadn't been that great.
He doesn't necessarily think that the war was planned far in advance, but rather they took the opportunity and they took a risk, which ultimately failed. So these are just a few of the many theories surrounding the war. Again, go back, have a look at, and don't limit yourself to the book. Do your own research. But it highlights that you don't really know.
Yeah, it's very hard to say whether Germany was more responsible than any other country, or was any country really planning for war.
One's individual ideology can greatly affect that. We have various good handouts about war guilt and about the various things. So do use that. But we hope that this has summed up one of the most controversial topics in historical debate in just over 10 minutes now.
And just remember that actually Greece was responsible
Yeah.
for World War One.
Yes, but we won't give you any evidence to support that because it's just so obvious.
Yes, definitely.
So, yep. So,
And Dick Cheney was also responsible.
yeah, Dick Cheney and Greece were
Together,
responsible.
they brought down modern civilization.
Pretty much. They attempted to.
They attempted,
But they didn't.
But Gandhi.
But Gandhi saved them. And, you know. Okay.
Good night.
Good night and good luck.